Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lucian Zaborowski. I am an Associate Director of Marketing here at Creatio, and I have a pleasure of hosting this webinar and have the pleasure to introduce the topic and, of course, our speaker. Today's session is about 5 major technology trends that are really transforming the professional services industry. And the speaker of today's session is no other but the superb expert, if I may say so, of everything related to Creatio and our solutions, Nandish Madapati. And we'll go into and introduce Nandish in just a second. We'll, of course, have him lead the session. My job will just be to give everyone an overview of the logistics of today's session. So let's start with just a little bit on the agenda itself. As I said, we will make sure that Nandish introduces himself as well as Creatio. And we'll talk about the professional services industry today. We do want to make sure that this is the focus, this industry, this vertical, and everything related to it, and everything related to digital transformation in this vertical. So Nandish will cover the main reasons for this industry to really be experiencing disruption, and what are the directions of digital transformation again within this industry. We're going to talk about some major trends. And then we're going to cover how Creatio, local platform, can really help with applying these principles and really digital transformation and managing the disruption in the industry. A couple organizational items. As all of our webinars, this one is also recorded, so we will make sure to share the recording of the session with you afterwards. We also kindly ask you to ask your questions to Nandish in the chat area of the webinar. We will be sure to have a Q&A towards the end, and we will address as many questions as possible that come through the chat. So if there's anything we can get to, we are of course happy to address it offline and follow up with an email, which we will send to all registrants with the recording of the session. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce my great colleague at Creatio, Nandish. Nandish, off to you. Please tell us about yourself and today's session.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Lucian. My only question is, how long do you have? Because I have a lot to talk about myself.
I'm sure. So we'll try to lock it all in an hour if you can.
I'll do my best. Hey, good morning, everyone. And I'm pleasure to be on this session as well, especially with my good friend Lucian. We work in the same office, but it's been a while since we have met face to face because of COVID, like everyone else. But a quick short introduction about myself is, as many of you already know, I'm an engineer by my academic standards. I was a mechanical engineer who had an immense journey over the last 20 years coming from a computer simulation industry focused on manufacturing into the CRM space in early 2010s. And then it's been an incredible last 10 years where I've had extensive experience working selling, showing CRM technologies, and of late also the low-code business process automation. And that is precisely the key reasons that keeps me very excited at Creatio is the focus on low-code platforms as we go along. Now, before I get into the meat of the presentation about professional services, a quick introduction about Creatio for people who don't know who we are. We are a true multinational company with offices spanned across different continents. We have customers in over 100 countries, employees that are strictly dedicated to development. So well over half of the 650 employees at Creatios are focused on developing the platform, and that is actually reflected in the Magic Quadrant that is Gartner has, and also the waves that Forrester comes up with. We do appear in about 5 different quadrants and 7 Forrester waves, which is a testament to a Creatio being a much smaller player, but kind of punching its weight way about its weight, right? So to speak, we do compete with the likes of bigger companies that have much more resources, but the quality of the product is on par, or probably even better than them. I do want to give a shout out to our partners. We have about 700 plus partners, and the partners do span across the expertise, right? So we have partners who do implementation of Creatio, who also sell Creatio. But then we also have a marketplace where our partners have built vertical solutions built upon Creatio platform as well. So some of the ones that you do see are going to be travel agencies, life sciences by Keen 360, warehouse management by Reply. We have ETL tools from Meditas and technology advisors. There's also a couple of mobile applications that is also available from the mobile applications perspective. So kind of wide variety of that. Now, when I think about professional services, I think usually, and that's probably true of everybody else, right? So we talk about two extremes. On one end, when you talk about professional services, it's usually accounting and tax preparations, auditing, those kinds of things, right? Big corporations outsourcing that work to the likes of, say, Accenture's, Deloitte's, Ernst and Young's, and things of that. On the other end of the spectrum, when I think of professional services, I talk about supplying bodies, right? So it's Christmas time, it is holiday season, people are buying stuff. Amazon needs to hire so many people to on their call center. They need to hire more people on their warehouse. So there is that gradual ramp up and then quick ramp down subsequent to that holiday season. But it's just not those two. It's not the big accounting firms. It is not this supplying customer service agents. There's a wide variety of industry that is around there. So, for example, if you're a local business owner, right, you're talking about getting some accounting help from a local accountant. Or if you want to do a payroll, then you want to go across a system that a company that offers you payroll systems. What about cleaning up of the buildings? You need somebody to come in and provide cleaning facilities. What about if you run into an issue? Then you have to go to a local lawyer who provides you local services. So there is also that between those two big spaces, there is also this little tiny professional services organization that has cropped up, and they also want to compete and they also want to make money. So when you look at the overall industry size that is validated by the likes of Accenture, you'll see that professional service industry is actually the second largest employment in the United States, right? And that is a significant number of jobs. There's almost like 10% of the population of the United States works in the professional services industry, right? And this is only going to be more and more as the lower end jobs has been shipping off to low cost countries, especially in the manufacturing side. So people are pivoting more and more towards the professional services side of this house, right? And also from a Western Europe perspective, they are the second largest region. So cumulatively between North America and Western Europe, more and more people are being employed in the professional services industry. Right. And when you take a look at the big four accounting firms, Accenture, Deloitte, Ernst and Young, and PwCs of the world, the combined revenue of them is about 120 billion. It's not something to laugh about. I would rather get 1% of that, quite honestly speaking. But that is a significant chunk of money when you really think about it. Now, what is going on? Like everybody is talking about digital transformation. We talked about that in the manufacturing webinar. We talked about that in the financial services webinar. So is professional services industry immune to that? This, frankly, the answer is no. It is not. It is also undergoing digital transformation as well. I have a personal example of that. So myself and our sales team last year, just before COVID hit, we were in Canada. We were in Toronto, Canada. And we were talking to the CIO. And that company, by the way, also provides management consulting. They're also talking about IT consulting, right? They also do all kinds of consulting work, professional services as such, right? And one of the key things that they're trying to do is they're actually adopting low-code technologies within their organization, right? Number one, because of cost cutting. Number two, because they needed to be adapting as the business changes. Number two, because of adapting to those business changes, then whatever lessons they are learning as they go through their own journey, they're able to use that on their business consulting side of the house. They're able to use that from the IT consulting side of the house. So there is a little bit of selfish reason in addition to cost savings that is assigned. So when you talk about McKinsey, 70% of the executives have say that, and I personally, because of that experience, can say 100% of the executives are also likely to accelerate transformation. So that is a given, right? But all of that is also supplemented by machine learning, AI technologies. That was a big thing about like who is the best consultant that needs to work on this agent, right? Who should we hire? What is the likelihood of these things? So there's a lot of those trends that is coming through even on the IT professional services organization as well. And like I mentioned previously, the lower skilled jobs are going to go away, right? Previously, the low skilled jobs of, tightening the bolt, tightening the nuts in manufacturing industry, they went to low cost countries because it's low skill. There's no reason for them to keep in here. So people in the United States had to pivot more and more into professional services side of the house, right? So that's where more and more of the money is going. But we should expect those things also to be changing, right? So now what is going on? What kind of, in the transformation side, what are the key reasons why those transformations are happening? Now, it will always come because of demand, right? There is always a supply part, there's always a demand part. Now, when you think about from a professional services organization perspective, there is the internal resources, which would be the employees of that organization. Then there is the external customers, which is the customers, right? And I suspect you can put this all into those famous Michael Porter's five forces of industry transformation, right? There is always the customers, there is the suppliers, there is the internal competition, and substitute products. So that is basically how any industry transforms. And that is basically what you're seeing in here. It's basically another way to visualize those Porter five forces diagram. Customers, by the way, are always asking for things faster, cheaper, right? They always want more stuff and they want it to be faster and they want it to be cheaper. Now, what that means is that organizations have to continue to deliver better, right? So for example, if say hypothetically, this is just an example, right? Let's say Accenture does go through transformation works. They do digital transformation. They're able to go ahead and uh, deliver more in terms of the consulting work, and they can keep that hourly cost the same. Now, guess what? The customer is more happy. There is only so many customers that they can service, right? And then they have to go after the customers from their competition. So then the competition heats up. So now PwC, on the other hand, has to step up to the game, and they either have to keep their cost lower, keep the existing infrastructure digital, not do digital transformation, which will hit their bottom line, or they have to keep up. They have to come up with low-code technologies to cut down cost. Being able to be nimble and deliver better products to their customers. So those are the top two, the customers and the competitions. They're kind of interlinked, right? But on the back end, there is also the resources. We're talking about internal employees. How does this internal employees work, right? Ultimately, this is professional services. Their biggest asset is people, is their employees. How fast can they keep their employees, motivated? How fast they can start to work on them? Make sure that they provide them all of the resources at their fingertips. How fast can they get hold of resources? Everything matters. So these are the key reasons in which the professional service organizations are moving forward. Ultimately, from a business perspective, it is all about profitability. It is all about cost cutting, right? But these are the key reasons on why the disruption is happening. So now we have understood why that is happening. What are the emerging themes that come out of that? Like how can professional organization make sure that they are able to adapt to those needs? Number one, it has to come down to the business model transformation itself, right? The other words is how quickly can they go after target customers? How well do they know about their customer? KYC, those things are important, right? The emerging technologies from a marketing perspective, being able to manage your projects very well, those kinds of business model transformation must undergo within the business itself. From my intelligent automation, you probably already heard the buzzword AI and machine learning. That is almost a given, right? These days, we are implementing machine learning in many, many, many formats, and a professional service organization is no different than that as well. And from a digital agility perspective, we're talking about how quickly can you develop newer applications? How quickly can you adapt to the changes? A quick example of this is the CARES Act that came about in 2020, that was done last year by the US government in response to COVID-19. So they came up with some new to provide funding to those businesses to keep their employees the same way. I was listening to NPR yesterday, and they were talking about the businesses getting a significant amount of money from the businesses from the government, whether that be restaurants, whether that be legal firms, and the only thing that they had to make sure was that there was no layoffs in that company. If they did layoffs, then they would not get that. So they kept those people employed while getting business money from the government. But of course, there was no businesses to validate that amount of revenue, and that has resulted in a tax nightmare. Right. So as they go to file taxes, it is creating these additional headaches. So now these legal firms like H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, and the bigger ones like Accenture, Deloitte have to keep up with that. How quickly can they learn that, and how quickly can they make changes to their tax software applications to make sure that as their customers come in to file their taxes, how quickly can they adapt, right? And of course, it all comes down to talent empowerment. You want to keep your talented people in the organization. You got to keep them motivated. You got to keep them with the right incentive. Otherwise, they're leaving. And then if you lose your people, it's like Apple losing iPhone. Like if they lose the iPhone, what else? What is Apple left with? Nothing really, right? So that is basically the key asset. So retention of employees becomes extremely critical. Now, with this background, Luchan, let's go ahead and launch a poll. Let's see what the audience thinks.
Sure, sure. And the poll, we really want to get your take on 2021 and what is important in terms of the digital, in terms of a theme, in terms of a topic. Just give us your take on it. We'd love to hear from you. And as you are answering, let's give the audience about 20 seconds. I wanted to ask you, quickly, Nandish, about something that I actually heard on another webinar, which is that the COVID pandemic has speed up digital transformation by at least 5 to 10 years generally. And I'm curious what you think in terms of the professional services industry. Do you think that's the case for this industry as well? Do you think that is it even more is the speed of transformation even higher for this industry? What generally do you think in terms of that concept of really the pandemic speeding things up dramatically?
Absolutely. I mean, you're spot on, Luchan. That has actually gone up even faster than we should have anticipated. So, like I was talking to you about the organization that my team and I met early of February 2020. That was prior to COVID hitting, right? We were thinking about 2 years or 3 years down the line with the CEO, and all of a sudden it just took off. Like all through 2020, it was all about, hey, we want to bring the low code in here. We want to bring the low code in here. We want to talk about AI. How can we bring in machine learning into this space? We are talking about recruitment. We are talking about IT, help desk. So there were many areas that they were identifying gaps, and they wanted to do things very rapidly. And of course, people started working from homes. Zoom became the new thing. People, IT, how does it continue to help? When people are working from different homes now as coming to the offices, it was becoming a logistical nightmare. COVID fundamentally shifted the digital transformation. I think it only accelerated that. Spot on.
Sure, sure. So let's see in terms of the results of the poll itself, and we can see that actually it's quite split. There's lots of topic, and each of them is important, it seems. But
Mhm.
this ability to be agile, it seems, is quite high on everyone's mind. Being able to not only be fast, but being able to change things in an agile way. Seems to be resonating with the audience. And again, I would think that you've seen this in the field, and you've talked to companies for which this has become much more crucial now than a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Employee onboarding was a big thing. Employee recruitment process was a big thing, right? And previously in the past, they were using older technologies from early 2000s, and it was very difficult for them to make changes as new laws were being done. How quickly can they make those modifications? How quickly can they roll that into production? Digital agility, I think, is a big one. I think the audience has the right pulse on that. So that is number one, because it does have a cascading effect on talent as well, right? So when you're providing good services to the employees, they tend to remain there because they are also getting empowered with that.
Thank you for that. And I think with that, it's back to you and the next part of the presentation.
Yeah, let's go back to the slides. All right, so now that we have looked at what are the emerging themes, how does it break down from a technology perspective, right? We are now looked into the digital part of it. How does it break down into different trends? And more importantly, since we're in Creatio, we need to make sure that that is something that we can play with, right? So that is extremely important. Now, from the trends happen to be on the machine learning side, right? And I hear this not only from the professional services. This is industry wide, right? This is a completely given. Then there's also the virtual offices because of COVID. There's big data as because of there's cloud technology. People data is no longer a taboo topic, right? Previously, you always big data was a thing that you always had to keep in mind because there was only so many servers that the company could afford. Cloud has kind of disrupted that. And there's automation from a business process perspective, and then the low code ability, which is basically the topic for the demo subsequent to this. So with that, let me go ahead and very quickly hit upon a couple of them, and then we will pivot over to the demo part of it, right? So from a machine learning perspective, it is all about understanding what are the services that is being offered to the customer, what is the likelihood of the customer actually going for that service, what is the likelihood of that customer actually become a prospect becoming a customer. So there are many areas in which the machine learning can be used. Now, looking at from a narrow lens of Creatio perspective, we offer four different kinds of predictions in here, right? So number one is when a request comes in from a customer for a particular asset, or say knowledge or a presentation or whatever that may be internally, who is the best person to work on that, right? So typically what happens in a management consulting is that as they're making, say, I am making an example in here, right? So let's say Deloitte has to make a presentation to Amazon. In such a case, the salesperson, whoever is working on that particular project, will reach out to an internal resource at Deloitte and say that, listen, I need so and so documentations, and I need this by so and so date. So there is an internal help desk that is catering to those kinds of requests. So the people then take that request, then they collect the basic information about Amazon and whatever they're looking for. Then they will assign various resources. Number one would be from the graphics department. Number two from a knowledge center. Number three from an editor. Number four from making sure that everything is fine. Then give it back to the sales rep, who will then take it and provide much more details. They may say, go back and work on that. So we are not talking about those things, right? So from a machine learning perspective, you need to identify who is the best resource, who has worked on those kinds of themes in the past, and assign it to the right editor, assign it to the right content owner, to the right digital asset team, so on and so forth. So whatever you do from a case management is also being employed internally at those professional organizations. By the way, what I just mentioned is actually a real example that actually happens in the firm that we were talking to. The second part, obviously, is the virtual offices. These days, it is actually becoming a key thing as people are looking to hire, right? So, for example, from a virtual offices perspective, it is, how do we make sure that our employees are continue to being very productive as they work on remote offices? So there are many things that we won't get into. Employee snooping is one of them, so that is not a good thing. But on the other hand, Zooms and Microsoft Teams being able to be collaborative at the same time. So Lucien, you and I work remotely these days, right? So we talk about Microsoft Teams. You probably have got that analytics from Microsoft Teams that talks about collaboration time, downtime. So the employee health also matters, right? So those are all the key things that is going on from making sure that from an employee retention perspective, they do offer the right environment, but also make sure that employees are continuing to work and deliver, right? And then from a big data, I think this is tied to the AI machine learning component, because for the machine learning to happen, you do need significant amount of data, right? You need a historical amount of data to make predictions. So because of cloud computing and the ability to go vertically or horizontal scaling because of AWS or hosting it on Azure, it is no longer a big deal. Of course, where we do spend time from a big data perspective is converting that data into knowledge. And that is where the analytics and the BI component comes in as well. But what it allows us to do is to highly segment what are the key target areas, like where are employees spending more time, is 80% of business coming from 20% of our customers, and if so, what is driving that? How can we use that information and apply to the remaining 80% of our customers to continue to grow the business part of it? It can be used from a product development perspective. There was an example that I showed, I think last month, where we talked about product forecasting, right? As in when those comes in, those information can be provided to the product development team for development as well. And then, of course, this goes back from the goes back into automation. One of the key frustrating things with employees is manual data entry. How quickly can you take that information and automate it very, very quickly? And this is something, Lucian, that we hear over time a lot with our prospect, is that, well, we take a request from our customer, it has to go to multiple teams, sometimes in parallel, sometimes in sequence, then it goes into an approval chain, either to the legal department or the financing department, or to the manager. The manager needs to be notified through an email or through an SMS. When that is done, then it has to be notified back to the original requester, so on and so forth. So we're talking about business process automation in here, right? And fortunately for us, and I'll show that later on in my demo, is how can you make sure that these processes are happening seamlessly so that I only have to work on that particular request or that particular task when it is assigned to me, or otherwise it is going to somebody else, right? So those kinds of automation routes are extremely critical, and that's where the business process angle of Creatio comes in. And of course, low code is the buzz thing of the next 10 years. Low code is going to ramp up just like cloud did back in early 2000s. So it's all about speed and innovation. How quickly can you adapt to that market? And I go back to that again example that I talked about, the Canadian accounting firm that was using low code to replace all of their legacy applications one by one, so that as their customer need changes, they're able to very rapidly make changes to it as well. So I believe with this, we are pivoting over to the hands-on demo. So if I will, let me go ahead and share my screen now. All right. So before I go to the demonstration, I wanted to quickly highlight the marketplace applications. So marketplace is an excellent resource for you to look at many of the vertical solutions that we offer. So for example, from advertising agencies, right? So this is one of the good examples of professional services where ad agencies can create or generate leads for a local pizza house, a local business owner. We're talking about travel agencies where you're handling tourism, or if you're talking about warehouse management or life sciences, whatever that may be. So there are vertical solutions that we have for many of our customers. So that's all available in the marketplace. So with that, let me go ahead and log on to the very first applications in here. So one of the key things with any professional organization is employee retention and employee hiring, right? So human resources, oftentimes this is outsourced resource, right? They will say that, well, I need to scale up my business. I am looking for 2 people in the next 3 months, and let me reach out to a local recruiting agency. So that professional service organization must go through candidate screening. They have to go through a workflow, hire candidates, then they do the interview, then they schedule interview with the actual business owner, and so on and so forth. So that is basically the context of it. So what you're now seeing is Creatio in its entirety. So what I've done is I've created a workspace for human resources, and then I've created a candidate object. So this is basically an object that is assigned. So what we do with this is using the power of business process and low code automation. So what I mean by that is the business process is going to give you a streamlined workforce or a workflow to take the candidate all the way from identifying a new candidate all the way to making an offer and onboarding them. So that's basically what is happening. Now, all of this is built using the low-code technology, using drag and drop functionality. Well, how do we do that? Well, as long as you're an administrator, you have the ability to get a blueprint of how this page is laid out, right? So what that means is, from a candidate perspective, now I'm showing you objects like name, hiring manager, and candidate, and you'll see that name, hiring manager, and candidate shows up. It's all low-code technology, right? So if you want to say, you know what, I don't want to put in a budget amount in here, I can simply click on this, and that goes away, and it's currently docked on the left-hand side. On the other hand, as I mentioned previously, from a low-code perspective, as your needs changes, let's say you need to add or make changes to this interface, uh, the only question that you have to ask is what kind of data are you trying to bring in, right? Is it a Boolean operation? Is it a date? Is it a time? Is it a date and time? Is it a currency? Is it say an order number or candidate ID, which is an integer, or some sort of a string or whatever that may be. Basically, whatever it is, simply drag and drop that. And then a dialog box will come up and say that, well, how do you want to represent that newly created entity in Creatio's database? Oh, by the way, do you want to store both date and time? Do you want to just store the date, or do you want to just store the time, right? So those kinds of very quick adapting of creating modifications to the pages is extremely critical, is very easy. And as you can see, it's all drag and drop. There is no programming required at all. So that is what we mean by low code with next to no programming in here. So let me give you a quick snapshot of what that user experience looks like, right? Because I talked about automation, but it's also important that we do that. So let's go ahead and try to bring in Luchan over to Creatio, right? So basic things like who is the hiring manager? We can pick somebody or recruiter, whoever the recruiter possibly is, and then we will put Luchan's name in here, right? And maybe we are hiring him for the LA office.
Great
So
city. Yes.
yeah, you like LA, right? It's a
Let's do it.
wonderful place. Yeah, let's do it. Excellent. So basically what is happening right now is that we are now kicking off a workflow for that professional services, the local recruiting firm, whatever that may be, to say, well, this is our standard practice, right? So maybe when they're hiring candidates for Amazon, they may have a different workflow. Maybe when they're hiring candidates for Microsoft, it may have a different workflow. So there'll be different workflows that will be created. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that using section cases in here. So this is the power of business process, where we are defining various things. So for example, we only have one workflow in here, but I can have this workflow just for Amazon. I may have a second workflow for Microsoft. I have another workflow for mid-market or small businesses. So depending upon key requirements, I'll be able to configure what that process would look like, right? So let's take, I'm opening up the curtain, so to speak, right now to show you what is happening in the background, right? So we have different stages, new, recruiter interview, team interview, background checks, and offer, which are pretty standard recruiting processes that happens, right? Within the new stage, there is scheduling Zoom call with the candidate. And now if I go to the new stage, that's basically what is being displayed to the candidate. Now, what that means is whatever you put in here is how the end user is going to use it. But you're kind of guiding them across the step to say that, well, if in the new stage I want you to do this, then when it goes to recruiter interview, I want to do these things. Then a team interview, I want to do these things. So basically, you're kind of hand holding the person step by step to make sure that the workflow is extremely rigid, not rigid, but at least there is there's actually a process to that. So this is basically the best part of business processing here, right? But now you're also noticing that alongside with this blue flag, which is basically assigning a task, I can also get an approval from somebody. I can send out an email notification saying that, hey, guess what? The recruiter has completed that task. Now the team should do something. So you can send out automatic email notifications using email templates and so on and so forth. Again, low code business process coming in handy in here. Now, what is happening over here is that anytime there's a little bit more logic to that, we will then use sub-process to do that. So for example, when it goes to the offer letter, you're now seeing that there is an LO plus button in there, right? So that is it's actually a business process that is running in the background. So for that, what we do is again using the low-code technologies to say what kind of workflows is going on. So for example, if I open that up, you will now will be pulled into a, a studio platform where you can create very complex. This is not a very complex one, by the way, but it does have a loop that goes endlessly until a yes or a no function comes through. So basically what we're doing is we're reading the candidate profile, then we're going to schedule a call to discuss the offer, then we're going to make an offer to the candidate, right? And the candidate can say three things. Well, I'll take that offer. Good. Luchin likes going to LA. He'll take the first offer he can get. He will go. Or he might say, you know what? I am not interested, and he may cancel himself. And then we'll say, okay, it didn't work out this time. Let's move on. Or he might say, you know what? That is a great place. I love going to LA, but what you offered me is not going to help me make any money. I need you to come back and make me a better offer, right? So now you're negotiating that offer. When that happens, you have to go back and discuss the offer with the hiring manager. Once you come back with a new offer, you go back and discuss with the candidate, and then you ask the question again, hey, what happened then? So this process will continue until the candidate gives us a firm yes or a no, and then we are taken out of that process. And then you notice that the candidate profile is either marked as completed or we're going to mark them as canceled. So this is again going back to the low code business process in its full glory. So let me show you how does experience look like from an end user perspective. So we'll do it very quickly so we won't go through all of the steps. Let's say as a recruiter, I scheduled a Zoom call with the candidate. I was able to do so. Then I have done my interview and I've collected the feedback. I will then go ahead and complete that task. And then basically at this point of time, we're going to be asked a question. You can see that the entire dialog box changed. And now I've been asked a question to say that, hey, do you want to move the candidate to the next round? Yes or no? If I say no, it will be immediately canceled. But hypothetically, Luchin did awesome in his interviews, so we're going to move him to the next round, right? And now it is time to schedule an interview with the team. So right now I can go ahead and use a interview process and say, you know, this is Luchin team interview process, and we can take advantage of the workflow that is available. This is actually a marketplace application that is out there. So maybe he is in IT and he needs to hire. We had to do an interview for that. So now if you go into the interview and start the interview, we will then populate with basic questions about, hey, tell us a time that you got coached. Tell us about a time that you had to experience a challenge and how did you overcome that? Right? What is the expected salary range? Whatever that may be, you know, maybe he wants $1 million, right? Who doesn't want $1 million? I want $1 million,
Me
right?
too.
Yes, he is great, right? So Luchin did an awesome job in his interview, and everything looks good. So now we have collected that process, and now we are advancing to the next stage. So we have completed the task, and now it is going back uh, to the interview stage. And now let's kick off a background check, right? So in the background check, you can see that a star shows up in here, right? That means that this process is extremely important. So why are we doing this? So as you're building low-code business processes, there is always a chance that things can slip through, right? Even though you have built in a process that is fairly obvious, people will try to cut corners depending upon the time they have or something like that. So these things will make sure that those things don't happen. So for example, the star is a mandatory task. If I try to go to the offer stage, I'm going to get an error saying that, you're not allowed to do that. We need to see what Luchan has done in his past life. So we have to go and do a background check on him, right? So now we're doing a background check from the agency. We will schedule that. Only after that we do that, executing that task, then only then we'll be able to share the background results with the candidate, and then we'll be allowed to go to the offer stage. So this is a good way of using seamless, simple way of doing that, right? Now I'll take you very quickly behind the scene to show you how did we do that. What is the difference between this star and that star? Again, the answer is in low code technology. If you simply click on this dialog box, on the way bottom, I have a step type as required, right? Meaning that this is absolutely mandatory. I cannot have you go there until you execute this task. Whereas this one is optional. We are only giving that option. Maybe when the background check comes in clean, there is no reason for you to share that with the candidate. Maybe the background agency will do that themselves. So it is situational, right? So those kinds of things. So now that we have done this, we want to discuss the offer with the candidate. This is basically where we are. So this is the offer letter stage. This is where we are right now. We have discussed this offer, and now you will see that I get the question, hey, did the candidate accept the offer? Yes, no, or negotiate offer. That is basically this one. Yes, no, negotiate offer, right? So this is how we are connecting that low code business process with the actual user experience, right? So let's say in this case, Luchan got $1 million. He's very happy. He wants to move to LA right away. So he's all happy. So now the offer letter has been done. We will automatically go to the signed offer letter to HR. And then once that is done, we will then kick off another business process where we will complete this task. You will now see that a new employee Luchan was created automatically. And then if you go into the Luchan record itself, then we will kick off another workflow for employee onboarding to say that, okay, let's collect his W-2s, W-4s, M4 forms, then we will schedule him with equipment to get his laptop, phones, schedule him to get his building passes, so on and so forth. So you can see that these are all interconnected. So what I started as a candidate, we were then being able to create an employee record, and after employee record, we were able to create an employee onboarding. Now, how does this look like in a professional organization? So as they hire people, what we do is use this basic low-code business process workflows to interconnect different objects, have them, well, we can't do employees until we do candidates. Well, we can't do candidates until they go through our process. Those kinds of automated, easy to understand, guide the people to say that this is the next best offer. This is the next best action that you should be doing at every stage is basically extremely important. So that was the workflow. Luchan, any quick thoughts on the demo that I just did?
Yes. I mean, there's a question here that I wanted to ask you in terms of the complexity of the process, and this is a recruitment process,
Mhm.
and I guess our audience would have questions because obviously there's representatives from different types of companies. If you think of a completely different process, for example, for travel agencies to build travel initial itineraries and have a flow of a starting point of
Mhm.
a travel itinerary and scheduling this whole process around building a travel
Right.
schedule, for example. How difficult would it be to build this from scratch? Like you have this process already existing, and it looks quite complex, so it must have
Mhm.
took quite of time to build. Let's think of this completely different industry or type of a company like a travel agency, and if you were to build a very similar process from the beginning, how much time would it take?
Actually, not a lot. I'll be honest with you. This demo that you're noticing with the budget, so the way that this demo was built up was there will be a budget. The budget goes through an approval process, and from there we start hiring candidates against that particular budget. Right? So those were two things. That was done by a 25-year-old with a marketing degree in about 2.5 days. Not even 2.5 days, in less than 2 days. That's how fast it is, right? In terms of making the what you call that. And I think we can go to the next topic because we're almost at the end of the time. But that is actually a great question. That's the power of low code is how quickly. Remember, I showed you that drag and drop functionality of
Sure.
creating those objects. That's basically what it is. It's a very simple section wizard. It takes you about less than 30 seconds to create a new object. Then it is all about designing how that page should look like. And I showed you that chevrons that show up. The whole thing will take you about 30 minutes. So yesterday I was talking to a customer, a prospect actually in Mexico, and they were looking at creating a quote management, right? They have lots of people coming to them, giving them quotes, and they were looking to build this from a low code perspective. And I actually built a quote object in front of him live. Then we added certain objects. Then we populated with products, and then if the quote amount was say greater than 1,000 pesos, it would go through another approval chain. If it was less than 1,000 pesos, it would go through a somebody else approval chain. The whole thing was built in like 55 minutes live in front of him. So those things are very, very fast.
Sure, but one could say, I mean, you're the expert here, right? You could build these processes with your closed eyes. But if you say, someone who's is quite junior would be
Hmm.
responsible for a significant process for a company, it would seem that you still want to have probably some kind of checks and balances on this. And even though it seems like technically they can do it, right? It's quite an advanced and still in terms of the way you think about it, in terms of the way you lay it out, it's still quite an advanced task.
Right. Actually, you bring up a good point, Luchan, because I did not talk about the delivery mechanisms, right? So from that perspective, of course, what I just showed you, you're not going to deploy it into production right away, right? And that's where Creatio is very unique in comparison with other low-code vendors, is because we have the ability, because we have deep expertise in the CRM side of the house, and because of that, we provide you with testing environment. We provide you with development environment. So ideally, you'll be building this in a development instance and then deploy it into a testing instance. Make sure there is enough data, and you do the due diligence of user acceptance testing and so on and so forth. And only upon successful completion of that, you then deploy it into the actual production instance. So from a developer, what I'm trying to highlight is that low code does not need any programming experience, right? So I told you that that candidate build was actually built by a 24-year-old with less than 3 months of work experience, with no programming background experience whatsoever. Her degree is in marketing, right? And she and of course she's very smart. That's another story. But as long as you have this basic logical frame of mind, if you build some basic things, if you configure things on your iPhone or Office 365, whatever that may be, you're more than capable of building low-code applications. All you need to know is what does that process should be solving, and that's what we're going for, right? We're not going after IT side of the house. We want to empower the business users who understand the business very well, to give them sufficient tools to build the processes that they're looking to build, whether that be travel, whether that be life sciences, whether that be warehouse management. It's up to them, but we give them all of the tools.
And since we're already kind of doing a Q&A a little bit, I have one more for you, just a quick one. On the main screen in the demo, you had templates drop down. What types of templates are there? And maybe there's just a more general question in terms of, building templates and using templates.
That is from the that's from the marketplace. So marketplace, the reason I started with marketplace is because travel agencies is a very common example of a professional services, right? If I had time, I would have shown you another one where this company offers they do the car maintenance for big corporations. So for example, if GE, Amazon, they have their own company fleet, and those company fleet cars must be maintained. There could be a breakdown of that, and these companies will go ahead and schedule services, route it to the right garage owners. They give them a replacement car, so on and so forth. So there's a wide variety of such use cases. So what I would ask people is to first go into those templates that is available in the marketplace. There is already one for travel agencies, there's one for franchisee businesses, there's another for life sciences, so on and so forth, right? Take a look at that. If you don't find them, then you can build your own applications using Creatio. And if you want to make that as a monetary scheme, like if you want to sell that in our marketplace, then you can definitely reach out to the marketplace team. Of course, there needs to be due validations by them. Then you can use that in our marketplace to potentially sell it to our existing clients.
And there was actually another question that I wanted to ask you, which was the building these processes and commercializing them and being able to do so. And you've actually answered the question with the marketplace point. But I guess the important thing is that, yes, these solutions effectively become their own. Well, if you build those applications, they effectively can be packaged in a way that can be scaled, right, and used across multiple types of businesses and deployed once they are tested, of course, and properly developed. So, but that's also an important point, that what you're showing is once it's developed, there's so many different applications and possibilities for it.
Spot on, exactly. Because what we do internally is there are certain templates that we use all the time as we build demos, whether that be color-coded activities, whether that be refresh page, whether that be pop-up button, because we want certain things to look good in Creatio. So we get the demo instance, and we go to the marketplace, download certain applications, and make sure that those are the foundational pieces as we build our demos. And then, of course, beyond that, then we can build the custom objects on top of it as needed. But the short answer is yes.
I have a couple questions, more questions here, but I think you still have a little bit more content. So let's get through that, and then maybe we have time for three more questions.
Sure. I think the next is what is it? It's a Q&A, and then I
Oh,
think
actually,
it's
so, yeah. So we actually got through
Mhm.
through it all. So then let's continue with the questions. The question I have here, again, another one from the chat, is what can Creatio do with certain integrations with third-party accounting, SaaS, toward enabling a medium-sized company to create its own tailored accounting system to
Mhm.
get, is that a possibility?
So was the question more about integrating with another accounting system or building an accounting system in Creatio?
Actually, it seems that question is relevant to kind of both. Let's say, how much you can build from scratch, and
Mhm.
then how much of integrations with accounting systems does Creatio offer?
Right, right, right. I mean, we do offer, I think, right in the marketplace, there's integration, bi-directional integrations with Sage. There's also one with QuickBooks. Those are the two big ones that we have, primarily because, it's coming from the mid-market side of the house where they, like my sister's a dentist, and she uses QuickBooks, right? So those are industry standards, at least in the North America part of it, and also Sage. Now, from a NetSuite perspective, we offer ETL tools. So as long as there's open APIs between, say, NetSuite and Creatio, whether that be ETL tools in our marketplace or through Zapier connectors, we'll be able to push data in and pull data in between those two applications as well. So those things are possible. Now, building that was why I was asking, was that integration? So the short answer is there are already pre-built connectors in our marketplace, and then for connectors that do not exist, we do offer open APIs, web services, both REST and SOAP, and now we'll be able to connect that directly to the applications like NetSuite or any other ERP applications that is out there. Also, if there is a connector like Zapier that can connect two different applications, you can take advantage of that as well. Now, moving on to the building that accounting applications in Creatio. I mean, again, we do offer invoicing. We offer order management, contract management, and invoicing management. But by definition, we are more of a CRM platform. So I wouldn't say that we do some basic accounting like reconciliations, and when you're doing some mortgage analysis, can you do the amortization schedule? The short answer is yes. It's going to take a little bit more work than what I showed you, but we wouldn't want to be a full-blown accounting competing with the likes of Sage or QuickBooks. But if it is basic accounting needs, short answer is it is possible, but that would be stretching a bit too much, I think.
Great, thank you for that answer. Another one actually is just about the Creatio free trial, and do we have them available,
Mm-hmm.
and on what basis can trials be used?
Trials do work. Actually, I'm working with a prospect who downloaded a trial, which is very interesting because we offer a 14-day trial. So I would say that when you do download a trial, make sure that you have 14 days to spend on it. The other thing that I would also highly encourage is if you're working with, say, a sales rep on an opportunity, for example, right? Like you are exploring Creatio, and then it's probably best that you bring in somebody from a technical side, like myself, and spend like a 30 minutes or an hour just exploring that solution, and then you go and build your own, whatever you want to do. A great example of that is actually an active opportunity that I'm involved in right now, where we did a basic demo. The sales rep actually did a demo of Creatio, but then rather than me coming in and doing a configured demo, we had the person go to our website, download a 14-day trial, and I spent an hour going through the basics of low code, building a custom object, how the page is laid out in business process. And he's very smart. He's super smart from a business side of the house. He latched onto it very quickly, that he was able to take it to the next level, right? So those are all, um, you know, um, those are all the things that he was able to do. And now he got more comfortable to the point that he went and showed that to his team, to see that, look how easy it is to do things with Creatio. So he actually made my job easier because otherwise I had to do a demo.
Wow. Overall, that sounds very impressive. In this sense, I just wanted to first of all thank you, and because we've had a bunch of questions, and we could probably continue with this for many more hours, and especially when you talk about me getting a job in LA for $1 million, I think I would love to hear more, and I would love to see more of the showcase myself. However, we are short on time, and so I wanted to just get us to uh, the next slide, and also because I don't really see any other questions in the chat right now. And I just wanted to again thank you for the presentation. I wanted to also emphasize to the audience that we do have lots of the webinars that we have done in the past with Nandish and lots of our other thought leaders on our website on creatio.com. But also we have a new initiative called Local Talks, which is actually podcast. So you can listen to at your spare time to some of the content, again, like this webinar on that we have organized, and you can actually download and listen to them quite easily, and you can scan the QR code to register for them. So I highly encourage you to visit our website, and actually you see the QR code on the web page as well, and you can listen to those podcasts in any of the platforms that you see there. So that's one initiative that I really wanted to emphasize. And then, of course, I wanted to just emphasize the fact that this webinar has been recorded, and we will share the recording with you. As well as any other questions that you might have, please do let us know. We'll be happy to answer them. Nandish, I will hand over to you back for the final word, since you are the one that really took us here. And then I think we will end the session. But any last comments, thoughts from your side, and any kind of words of wisdom for our audience?
No, I mean, this was very enjoyable for me. I mean, I'm very passionate about low code technology. That was, to be perfectly honest with you, when I joined Creatio 2 years ago, low code was something that I had not heard of. I had no experience with that myself, although I did with CRM, and a little bit of programming background, and then to spend 2 3 months and then realize, oh my God, the power of low code is incredible. And by the way, this is just up and coming, and it's going to be this big wave. And I'm at with Creatio at the right place at the right time is tremendous. And I'm pretty sure everybody has seen that power, hopefully in the last 1 hour or so. But very happy to be in this webinar. Hopefully we'll have more of these, and I plan to be participating as much as I can. Thank you so much, Rochan.
Thank you, Nandish. Thank you to our audience, and please do come to our next webinars that are coming up. Again, visit creatio.com for more details. Thank you, everyone, and looking to hear and see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.